Alright, so I know a lot of the focus right now on Division 2 is basically just in regards to this rainbow roll bullcrap. And honestly, it's frustrating to me because I know that this is not exactly a good thing for the game. And that this is not a good focus for the game. I mean, basically forcing rolls to be a certain thing just because players don't like getting certain stuff in their loot, it's a very selfish idea, one, and two, it doesn't really offer anything for the long-term success of this actual game. And it's just a very self-serving, short-sighted viewpoint. Now, if you've watched my channel over the last, I don't know, I'd say probably about 2 months or so, I have come out with a few hybrid builds that I thought were, usable. I've come out with some that were just, I basically just said, I don't think that this is a good hybrid setup. I don't think that this brand set or this gear set is good for hybrids. But I've come out with a few that I think are really good, and some of those are still actually in my loadouts. But I didn't just go into making these builds just, randomly. I didn't really just decide that I'm going to just pile on a bunch of stuff and see what works. I actually, went through a process of thinking about what has the best benefit, what can actually give me some returns, and does it actually work? Does it actually give me those returns in game? If you've watched my channel enough, if you've seen the videos where I'm, basically just talking about different types of weapon damage, I'm talking about different types of healing, you're probably familiar with this. And basically it's just saying that, the more different types of stuff that you stack, the better the overall returns that you're going to get are. Now this pretty much forms the fundamental design theory of all Division 2 builds. And that's, the more that you stack, the better you get. Now from most standpoints, Division 1 was a much better game in terms of build theory and build crafting, and as far as hybrids go, hybrids were a lot more effective. Whether they were used as much or not, or whether people preferred them or not, that's a different story. But they were a lot more effective in Division 1 for a very simple reason. In Division 1, it could pretty much be summed up that all of the talents, all of the gear, all of the stats themselves were kind of based on diminishing returns. So what this meant was, the more that you invested into it, the less that you actually got from it. So, if you were looking at firearms, for example, the more firearms you had, the less benefit you would actually get from each addition of additional firearms. And that worked for the electronics and skill power as well. If you looked at your actual skill stats themselves when you were adding skill power, you would basically see that, once you got to a certain point, the amount that you actually gained from it was very weak. So if you really did want that super max BFB sticky bomb, you could invest all into skill power. And yes, you would get a very strong sticky bomb. But when you went from, like 400,000 skill power to 450,000 skill power, it really gave you a very limited bump. Maybe only 5 or 6% total damage over, the 400,000. So what this meant was your first investments were actually your strongest investments, meaning that if you distributed all of your investing evenly, you would get a higher total return distributed through all of your stats than you would if you just invested into one single stat. Now with the Division 2, they pretty much went in the opposite direction. Now some of the things have changed because they, went away from the total armor percentage, and that kind of made, armor a very linear process. So armor and health are very linear now. I mean, there still is the additional, percentage bonuses that you can get, but for the most part, everything is very linear. You can't really get any, multiplicative bonuses for your armor or your health. So this has the effect that basically makes armor in the long term completely unable to basically keep up with the amount of weapon damage or skill damage that a player can put out. And like I showed in the pyramid, the skill damage and the weapon damage and all the stuff that you can add to increase your skill damage, weapon damage, have an exponential increase. So the more that you put on them, the stronger your bonuses get. The more multiplicative bonuses that you add, the more returns that you actually get, the higher the amount of damage you can get. And I think it's somewhere, like towards the high end of armor, you're basically getting like a 3.3 multiplier for all your armor. But when you get to weapon damage, when you invest fully in weapon damage, you're getting like a 10 times multiplier for all of your damage. So there is a huge difference between those two. And this is because of the exponential increase that they have. Now, the reason this matters for hybrids is that you actually have a rather murky, undefined range for hybrids. But for all intents and purposes, if you invest everything into one stat, you're not a hybrid. If you invest 95% of your stuff or 80% of your stuff into one specific area, you're probably not really a hybrid. All right. And if you invest, evenly across the board, yeah, you're a hybrid. But the reason this is important, like I said, in D1, when you're investing in the beginning, you're getting a greater amount of returns. So if you invest in 3 different things, you are basically able to get the highest potential investment for each point, which means that overall your build may not be specifically strong in this area, but you're getting the best possible returns for everything. In Division 2, there's no increase in the amount that you can actually get for lower investment. And then this also has the detrimental effect on weapon builds or skill builds because, you can't really get into that investment very well because you can't build up enough. You can't add enough of each specific thing to give you a super strong boost. You can't reach that top potential damage because you just can't add those multiplicative bonuses to both of those stats. If you want the max weapon damage, you need all weapon damage, you need all crit chance, crit damage, you need, I guess headshot damage as well if that's the route you're going. And you also need your talents to be focused on giving you total weapon damage or amplified damage, and you need to have some of those multiplicative bonuses like, damage to armor, damage to health, damage to targets out of cover. You need all of those things to reach the top of the damage platform. And that's the same with skill power. You need total skill damage, you need amplified damage, and it just doesn't happen that way when you basically have to stack everything into a specific area to get these returns. So what this basically means is when you are a hybrid, you are intentionally nerfing the amount of damage that you can do, and you are not really getting any of the higher thresholds for your armor. So basically this is why you see a lot of people running with 6 armor cores and crit chance, crit damage, because the armor provides much more benefit for the overall investment of the build than you would if you just try to split up armor and weapon damage. It doesn't work as well as as you'd think it does. It doesn't work as well as you'd hope it would. So really simply, investing into hybrids with Division 1 was a lot more beneficial and a lot more successful than it is in Division 2. Now, this I believe is really the true issue behind all the rainbow loot and everything. This is the issue that needs to be addressed. If players don't like hybrid builds in this game, it's for a reason, and it's not just because of rainbow loot. Rainbow loot is a symptom of the overall poor quality of the design of the game. Rainbow loot is a product of the oversimplification of the stat system from the original, launch of the game. And it's not good. This is the area that should be focused on. The just vast power that you can gain from talents and the vast power that you can gain from just stacking multiple things at the sacrifice of everything in between. Now, look, you can argue with me all you want. You can say that, well, that's not the way I play. I don't need that. I just don't want rainbow loot anymore. This is BS. Blah blah blah. Like, I honestly, I don't care about your one-sided opinion. I care about the health of the actual game. And as I've pointed out to a few people, the fact that people are leaving this game after all of these so awesome for the player changes just leads me to believe that they are wrong, that you have no idea what you are talking about. The problem with the game is that this band-aid measure, this, I'm just going to try to get what's better for me and my build, and I don't care about the health of the game, that is exactly what is causing the problems. That is exactly what is making the game go down the drain, because the changes just aren't healthy for the game. The changes are not good. The design, the intent behind them is garbage. And adding more garbage to the problem is not going to make it go away. Adding more garbage to the problem is not going to fix anything. It is just going to make it a bigger and bigger mess. This is why I talk about what I talk about. Because if you actually look at it, if you actually do the math behind it instead of going based on your opinions, you can see very easily that there are problems with the very design of the game, and this is why certain things are wrong and bad and don't work. But like I said, a all red, completely invested into weapon damage type build with all the good talents and everything, they're going to be doing, roughly about 10 times more damage than the base version, right? So a person who has no investment in anything will basically be outgunned 10 times by somebody with full investment. But on the other side, a person with full armor investment will only be getting like a 3.3 times bonus over somebody with, just minimal investments into armor and health, or, just the base that you have on your character. This is why rainbow loot is considered bad, because the stats just do not work. And I'm going to be going into some other details on how the game kind of screws over hybrid builds, how the game kind of screws over, some skill-specific stuff and some armor-specific stuff for basically the benefit of just firearms players. And, you can like it, you can not like it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all up to you. But as I see the game and as many other people see the game, this is a RPG looter. And to me, that indicates that you should be able to play however you want. You should have good stats that you can invest into that are meaningful. And this is where Division 2 fails. It just does not offer that level of benefit to these types of players. It does not offer benefit to diversifying your build. It is basically just an all or nothing type of situation where the Holy Trinity is pretty much the only thing that matters and everything else is just trash. And I don't have a problem with the Holy Trinity. I understand, the tank, healer, damage perspective. I like those options being on the table. But at the same time, I also enjoy being able to play outside of the strict 3-ring circus. I want something else. I want the ability to actually create and make something that's meaningful, rather than everything just being boiled down to just invest this because that's the only thing that matters. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one.